Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Menowave Lounge, hot flashes and cool conversations. I'm Robin Duke, and we have Janette Blissett, and we have Jen Kunkel on the show today. Hi, Jen. Hi, Janette.
Hi.
Welcome in. So I'm really excited today because Jen is going to be talking to us about some really interesting topics around mind, body, energy, emotion, energy connections. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So Jen Kunkel is a midlife women's wellness strategist and host of the Women Rocking Midlife podcast. With a background in chemistry, biomedical engineering, she challenges outdated views on menopause, advocating for a holistic, empowered approach to well-being. After overcoming teen depression and later the emotional struggles of perimenopause, she turned to meditation, mindfulness, and energy work for healing. Now she helps women embrace midlife with vitality, purpose, and personal responsibility for their wellness. Hi, Jen. That's great.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Well,
Yes.
we're glad you're here. We're certainly glad you're here. I've got a question for you. I'm going to kick this off if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'd like to jump right on in. And I'm always curious about people who actually serve a higher purpose, if you will. And I'm curious about learning more about you and why this space and why this is so important to you.
Thanks for the question, Janette. Yeah, I actually have been into meditation and mindfulness and personal development since my teens. As you mentioned in my bio, I experienced teen depression. I was never diagnosed because back then our parents didn't think about that. They didn't say, "Oh, you're sad all the time and we don't know why. Let's go to take you to the doc." So we didn't do that. And I'll skip ahead a little bit, but I went the traditional route, college and marriage and all that kind of stuff. And I got my degree in chemical engineering, but I knew before I even graduated that I wasn't passionate about it. I always wanted to help people who were struggling, especially people who were struggling emotionally like I did, because I thought I realized once I got myself out of that at a younger age that, you don't have to struggle with that. You can get past it. And then I was working as a coach, life coach, business coach. I did some of that in the past. And then when I hit menopause or perimenopause, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't even know perimenopause was a thing until I missed a period. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I pregnant at 40 something? And then I looked into it and I discovered, nope, nope, okay, that's just a symptom of perimenopause. So still didn't know about the emotional aspects of it. I thought menopause was just you might have hot flashes, you might not, and your period stops. That's all I knew about menopause. And I see that happening a lot. So when I was in my 40s, after that missed period and a couple of those, I started experiencing anxiety, depression again. And I was like, what is going on? I thought I dealt with this when I was younger. And I realized years later, I actually didn't even know then that it was perimenopause. I just knew that the techniques that I used in the past worked again. And then years later, as I started putting on weight and investigating menopause again, I realized, oh my gosh, all that anxiety that I had felt, the wild thoughts, the emotions, that was perimenopause. I didn't even know that until later. I feel passionate about educating women so that they don't have to feel crazy. They don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm losing it and I don't know what's going on. So I'm really passionate about helping women in that area. I think a lot of women just think that they have to struggle through it and power through it and push through it. And I want to help them be more at peace with this phase of life. I want them to be able to thrive and not just drag themselves out of bed for 10 years. That's it in a nutshell.
I'm just curious because when I saw the chemical engineering background, I'm thinking to myself, okay, where's the alignment? I applaud you for having enough of awareness and consciousness to know that wasn't the thing for you. So good,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it
good
wasn't.
job. Good job.
You're absolutely right. Educating women, especially early on, to understand what perimenopause is and how to recognize it for themselves and what they can do. Now, I really liked the idea that your approach is not only the physical part of it, but the emotional energy part of it. Can you share a little bit about that? Because we're moving into what chakras are, which is Some people may understand what that is, and some people haven't heard it and understand what does that have to do with menopause and menopause symptoms.
Yeah, actually, what I do, the reason I got into this was mostly because of the emotional aspect. And as I did that, I discovered that some of this work also helps with some of the physical symptoms, like especially the vasomotor symptoms, like the hot flashes, night sweats, and trouble sleeping. But yeah, the emotional part of it is to me because of how I got through the depression in the past and because of how I dealt with it when I was in perimenopause, even though I didn't know that's what was happening. That was very connected to the mind body connection. So, emotions, people a lot of times look at emotions as completely separate from the body, look at emotions as like this is like in your head or in your heart, but they don't realize the connection with the body. So what happens is emotions can actually become stuck in the body. And the way I see it is menopause is like the second puberty that comes up and shakes your hormones up and shakes your body up. And it can dislodge some of those emotions that have been stored. There's actually this might sound a little bit woo to some people, but there's actually starting to become more and more studies around the connections. We're a whole person. We're not separate. We're not like just this body with emotions floating around separately. We're all one thing. Actually, I read this book called The Molecules of Emotion by Candace Pert. She is a research scientist and she has discovered this is even way back in the 80s. She was starting to discover this connection. Like your nervous system is actually not just the physical nerves in your brain. You've got the biochemistry that affects your nervous system too. And that is both affected by your emotions and your emotions can affect it. Yeah, so that's the biochemical part. So the energy part is a little more esoteric, I will say that, but also there have been studies where I don't think it's as broad as other science, right? So the idea is that there's like this energy scale, right? And I'll just summarize it simply, but vibrational frequencies of energy. Some are like heavy and dense and they lower your energetic vibration. Things like anger, hate, guilt, shame, those kind of emotions will lower your energetic frequency, which can cause you to feel depressed. It can cause you to have low energy. It can cause you to feel lost, insignificant. If you're not feeling passionate about life, those kind of things are integrated together. They're correlated. The other side of the energy spectrum is higher, which would be things like love, peace, gratitude. Yeah. So you get the idea there, right? We want to be in that higher energetic frequency. And to do that, we can focus on releasing those stuck emotions in the body, and that can help. There's lots of things we can do. Actually, even the food we eat can affect our energetic vibration and our,
So I
our physical energy too. So.
Okay, that I love that explanation because that does help us to understand that there is a spectrum of energy that we in vibration. And I think that this is a conversation that I'm starting to hear more and more about women understanding that their moods and are connected with a spiritual vibration, and wherever you are at in your spiritual body or your spiritual mind or where you see yourself spiritually is definitely connected to our physical. And we talk about being in gratitude a lot, and that helps us to change the way that we see today in our current reality. If you're having a bad day, just stop and say three gratitudes, and that can change the frequency. So, how does this connect with chakras? We're hearing that word chakras. So, how do they connect? And you talked about stuck energy.
Yeah, I actually started using the chakra concept because a lot of people understand what that is. I know a lot of people don't. So, for those of you who don't, a chakra is basically just an energy center in your body. So, there's seven main chakras in your body that represent different aspects of your physical and mental and emotional well-being. So, a lot of people look at this like it's a spiritual thing and it is used in that area too. But it's also been used in Eastern medicine for thousands of years. So so I look at it more from that standpoint. I think that spirituality and science can coexist. They're not necessarily in conflict with each other. Some people think that they are. I don't think that they are. So I do a chakra balancing, right? And I've actually done a couple of chakra balancing workshops in the menopause group, in the menopause support group. So you have like your root chakra. There's seven main chakras, like I said. The lower ones are really key for menopause. They can all come into play, but the lower ones are like really a big deal. Like the root chakra, for example, is around your tailbone, your sit bones, that area. And this is related to safety and security. If you're experiencing things like anxiety, panic attacks, low energy, sleep, which is so common, then you might have an imbalance in your root chakra. And it's really actually fairly easy to balance your chakras. It's just a matter of a simple meditation can help do that. And I didn't mention earlier the that there are some studies that show that mindfulness can calm anxiety and improve depression, even when it's related to menopause. So, a chakra balancing is just a form of meditation that's very specifically focused on different parts of your body.
So if I was having anxiety, like in my tummy area, like food gave me upset tummy and I would get like stress or something like that. So what would you say about something like that? Because I know that there's a lot of digestive issues that women in menopause go through, and especially around our belly area. What would that be like?
Yeah, actually, I would look at more than just the chakra there. I would probably ask you about how were you eating that meal? What are you doing things? Are you standing up eating? Are you in a rush? What was going on before that? What was going on after that? Or if you're experiencing it all the time, that's one of the first things I do is I look at what are the triggers. So I'm also very systematic about how I approach things. So that's one thing I would say is what's going on around when you're eating and how do you go about eating? Do you take the time to slowly eat your food, appreciate it? Are you eating too much? Are you eating too little? Are you eating the wrong things? Because there's a lot that could be going on with the gut. And then, of course, you could do a simple meditation to help balance. When I balance the chakras, I usually do all seven. So I go through the whole
Okay.
process, which you can do in as little as 5 or 10 minutes, really.
What comes to mind is mindfulness, to
Mhm.
be aware and in the moment. We talked about the gut issues, and a lot of times it stems obviously from things that we are taking in, but also our state of mind when we are taking those things in. The thing that occurred to me is this is back into the mind body emotion and energy connection. Is that if you're carrying forward into your life, maybe some things that have happened in the past that have made you feel a certain kind of way. Sometimes women feel shameful about being at this stage in their life, and that causes some type of energy backlog or some type of jam up in their system. So that's what came to mind as you were sharing the mindfulness piece of your practice. Would
Yeah,
you
for
agree with
sure.
that?
So what I do goes way beyond the chakra balancing. The chakra balancing can actually be used as a tool to find things like that, Jeanette. Emotions from the past that are stuck, that come up, trauma from the past, maybe, or even, and when I say trauma, it could even be like a micro trauma, like something that left a lasting impression on you, even if it seems like no big deal to other people. Maybe you really wanted some toy and your parent didn't get it for you, and something about that exchange just really imprinted on you, even it seems like a minor thing. But those kind of minor things imprint on us and they imprint on our energy, and we're carrying them around for our whole lives, thinking, even if it does come up, what's the big deal about that? Just get over it. But it
But
can
even
stay
just
there
understanding
and
that,
yeah, it
just
can stay there until you address it.
I'm thinking just understanding that those things are important to acknowledge, and that may be part of the reason why you're having some of the symptoms that you are currently having. So I know it's all tied together. So I appreciate you indulging me in this. But
Yeah, great questions, actually. I love it.
I really, the idea of understanding what a trigger is in our life, because so many times we've lived with these emotions for a long time. And yet, when we start into the menopause symptoms and processes and our hormones are changing, all of a sudden, a lot of these emotions are just amplified. And we can be triggered by something that we didn't even realize that was going on. And then all of a sudden we go, wow, did that come from me? How come I got so angry so quickly like that and exploded? Where probably even 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been an issue. But I guess my point is that for us to recognize when that happens and actually mindfully think about that for a second and go, okay, wow, that was really not me to get that emotionally upset about something. What's going on there? And I think that's tuning in to our emotional life and really examining it. And if your life isn't humming along, which I mean, not every day is going to be like that, but when you see big outbursts, like either high emotions or even low emotions or crying jags, those are signals and signs that there's something more going on in the emotional world.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been seeing some people, t some women talking about how it's affecting their job, that they're getting emotional or their relationships, saying things like, my husband and I are fighting a lot, and he's saying that I'm being disrespectful, or, and I'm like, am I the one out of line? Am I just putting up with less? So there's a lot of that going on. And I think it's a combination of things. I think it is definitely our emotions are stirred up at this time. And if we're not consciously looking at the triggers, if we're not consciously looking at what's going on inside of ourselves so that we can regulate it naturally, then it does just, it blindsides us and we don't expect it even ourselves, much less the other people in our lives are not expecting it. Yeah, so identifying those kind of triggers is key. That's one of the first things that I do with a client is, okay, what's going on? And let's look at what might be triggering that both in the moment so we can see patterns of what kind of situations are triggering this. And then we can look at what might be the underlying root cause within you that what's being stirred up. Is this something from your past? Is it something that you haven't addressed before? So what can we do to, and then what can we do to shift that energetic imprint?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting because I know that I've been in situations where it would seem that I was a little over the top in my response to, and when I think back, I'm thinking, wow, what was it that made me amplify, my emotions at that time? And what I have identified is that when I feel like I am not being understood or heard, it triggers something in me and I have to amplify even more in my mind. That's what I think I have to do, even greater. That's one of the things that I've identified as a trigger when I feel like I'm being misunderstood or not being heard or not being given the opportunity to say what I want to say. And it goes, and I'm sure that
Yeah.
other people have experienced, other women have experienced the same thing, I'm sure.
Yes, I
I,
can definitely relate to that. And there are a lot of factors that can contribute to some of that. But overall, for myself, I can only speak for me. When that happens, when I see that happen, that's a key for me to be able to actually take a step back and try and look at whatever that in the moment that's coming up for me. And sometimes it can be like an old memory, and that old memory is stuck. But once you identify that, then what do you do with it?
That was my question. Exactly.
Yeah, how do you get rid of it? How do you heal from that?
So that's definitely going to be it. First of all, it's insightful that you guys are looking at those things. So you're already saying, okay, what's happening here? I know this isn't the normal me. So what's going on? And that you are taking that step back to look at it. So congratulations on that part. But yeah, once you uncover that, there's a multitude of ways that you can address it. I actually have a whole, what I call the personal resilience toolkit, and I work with clients to customize it for them to find the tools that work best for them. So I have a variety of different mind body practices that we can use. Most of them involve some form of meditation, but I'll just give you an example of how we would use the chakra balancing as a tool to identify something going on in your body and as a way to start to address it. I've actually been refining the chakra balancing play shops that I've been doing in the menopause support group. And I'm actually really excited to do this new version of it. So I'm going to share a little bit of that process with you right now, which is going to show you what you can do with that. So we would do a scan going through all the chakras just to notice what's going on without judgment and allow any impressions to come up. So you could also do the same thing with something you already noticed, like in real life when you notice a trigger. And then the next phase would be to ask it, like, what's going on? So you notice these triggers in your life, right? So let's translate that to this. So you would say, okay, where do I feel this in my body? Scan your body to see what's coming up for you. Sometimes it'll be a real clear answer. You'll feel a tension, a tightness somewhere. Sometimes it'll just be like a really subtle impression or anything in between. It could be a thought, an emotion, a memory, anything like that could be coming up. So whatever comes up, you just allow it without judgment. And then this part can be really challenging when you get started. So if you're trying this, don't get frustrated, don't give up. Just ask it, what do you want? What do you need? What's this? What are you trying to tell me? So usually when something like that happens, it's our bodies trying to tell us something that needs to be resolved. All right. So then once you get an answer, or even if you don't totally get an answer, because if you're new to it, you might not, it's going to be it's challenging. The first time I did it, I had a massage therapist. I had this knot that just would not go away, repeated massages, and it wasn't going away. And she brought me into that concept of asking the thing in your body, what's going on. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, this woman she's really woo. And at the time, I was not at all. I was actually very skeptical. So anyway, I asked it and I was like, I don't know, it's not answering me. So if you feel like that, it's okay. Give it a chance. Keep trying. Do your best. And then just, if you don't get a clear answer, that's okay. Still move on to the next step. All right. So I've got a couple of different ways you can deal with it. One is to feel whatever you're feeling, because your emotions are there for a reason. They want to be, like, as Janette said, they want to be heard and understood. So hear and understand your emotions. Just let yourself feel it. Get yourself into a safe space where you feel comfortable, even if you just go into your own bathroom and close the door when nobody's going to disturb you and cry your eyes out if that's what you need to do. Let yourself feel what you're feeling. I always say it's okay to be sad, because a lot of times people try not to be sad. Like, they think it's not okay to be sad. And it's no, that sadness needs to express itself. That's how it's going to get out. That's how you're going to move on from it. That's one way to do it. And then another piece that I'm going to be incorporating into the chakra balancing experiences that I'm doing in the group is to transmute that feeling to love. So you might do both of these things depending on what kind of response you get from the impression. In the meditation, I would say notice the feeling and then imagine this orb in front of you and let that feeling, when it's ready, come up into that orb. See it flash and transmute into love from that orb. And then you can put it back into your body. You can release it into the universe, knowing that you're not putting yucky garbage out into the universe. Mm-hmm. So that's one way that you can deal with that. There are also deeper mind-body practices that I use with my clients that require a lot more depth than we could go into in this podcast.
It's interesting because my initial thought process is to intellectualize it.
Mm-hmm. You can do that too.
Yeah. In my mind, I play it back, mm-hmm. and then I think, okay, what could I have done better? How could I have improved my communication to be much more clear and have clarity in what I'm trying to, say, what my message is, and try to control it from that standpoint. But there's limitations to that, mm-hmm. because it seems like that might be surface. And it seems like there is an opportunity to go deeper than that, to actually unlock some things. Because I get choked up. It's up in here.
Okay. Yeah, that's your throat chakra.
Yeah. That's where I feel like I'm almost ready to cry. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should.
Do you ever let yourself? Yeah.
I never do, Jen. I never, ever do.
Oh, yes, definitely. So your throat chakra kind of aligns with what you said about being heard and understood, because your throat chakra is about communicating and having your voice be heard and understood. And if you feel like, yeah, if you feel like that comes up and you need to cry, go cry. Go
Mhm.
someplace safe and cry. Cry into a pillow if you need to. I
That
know
is
that
a
sounds,
very good
that's
point.
overly simplified, but yes,
No, but
it
that's a
helps.
really good example because I think a lot of us try to control our emotions because we have a certain way that we are expected to act or be or say or do in order to be living in our world. And like you said, finding a safe place to let that emotion out is so important, just to recognize that and let yourself be open to experiencing that emotion. I do something very similar in my practice with meditation, where when I go into a meditative state, a relaxation and just being with inside of me, I'll take that emotion, whatever comes up first, and look at that. And I actually build a fire and I put it into the fire and I burn that up. And then I take an oil, a healing balm oil, and put that, I vision my heart and I put a healing balm of joy and love and peace into that so that I'm actually producing a healing effect because healing does take time. And all these things that we're talking about do take a little bit of time. It's not like you say the magic words and then poof, they're gone. But what you're doing is you're shining a light on it and you're promoting it to start moving in a healing way so that next thing, when that trigger comes up, it doesn't feel as intense or as strong, and you can recognize it. And then you can go back and say, okay, what do I need to do here? So I think it's that awareness of understanding our triggers and then starting to heal them so that they eventually it's okay, yeah, I saw that, but it's not affecting me today and I can live in peace around it. So those are some of the things that I do, but I feel like that aligns with what you're saying. Are there some daily practical tips that we can use, like in a daily routine, that we can start recognizing where our energy is stuck at or where we're at on a daily basis?
Oh yeah, for sure. I love your meditation, by the way. That's great. There's, like I said, there's so many different ways, and I have a handful of my favorites to go deep on. For as far as daily practices, there's a couple of things you can. So one thing I go into is, so you're saying to start to recognize your triggers, daily practices to recognize your triggers. I would actually start out the day. You want to set the tone, right? I look at your emotional well-being and your energetic like baseline as like this correlated with your physical body. So, like you said, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Now, if you're going to work out at the gym, you don't just go once. Oh, I'm going to do a couple sets of curls and now I never have to work my biceps again and that's it. It's the same for your emotional well-being and your energy. So you can do something. I always tell people, because people are like, I don't have time. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. You can do it. I would say at least do 5 minutes, but if you can't even swing 5 minutes, do a little meditation while you're brushing your teeth, okay? Because you should be brushing your teeth for about 2 minutes. That's what they say. So if you can do a little bit of a meditation just to regulate your body and calm those hormones and calm your emotions, and then set an intention that, okay, if I'm going to notice triggers today. So if you can set an intention, that just like programs your subconscious to look for those triggers and to notice them when something comes up so that you can make a note, you can take a step back, have this plan. So when I'm working with a client in depth, we would go in depth like, okay, here's your daily ritual practice, something that fits into your lifestyle. So if they tell me they've got 2 minutes, that's going to be the brush your teeth thing, probably. If they tell me they've got 5 minutes, that's great. Do a little meditation. Preferably, you can do a little bit longer. Maybe you do longer on some days where you actually go into a good 10-minute meditation, you balance your chakras, and then you set these intentions too. If you can do longer, that's even better. Maybe you just do longer once a week. I work with clients to find what fits their lifestyle and what helps them. Now, the more you can put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. But if you really just want to try it out, just give yourself that 2 minutes while you're brushing your teeth and set the intention to say, okay, I'm going to start looking for the triggers today so that if something affects me, and I actually suggest you write it down. Start writing it down so you can really, you think you're going to remember, but it's a lot easier to see the patterns when you write it down and you go back and look at it. So that would be my quick tip to just get started.
Yeah, and also too, another tip along with that, if you're in the middle of your day and you don't have paper and pencil, on your phone, you usually have like notes. And your
Hmm.
notes, you can actually verbally talk into your notes.
Yeah.
And I've done that lots of times where I'll just put on the record button and just say, okay, note to self. This is what I noticed today, and check it out a little bit later. And technology is great, isn't it? You
Yes.
just gotta
Make
use
sure
it.
you go back and look at it though.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
would actually put in your calendar a reminder, like in the morning and at night, or if you have a habit tracker, whatever tool works best for you. Just put a little appointment with yourself for 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever.
I
Yeah.
also find that first thing in the morning, I'm always a little, that's when I'm just waking up and my mind isn't busy with all the things I have to do for the day. That for me is a good 5 minutes of just setting the intention for the day and just checking in with my body and how am I feeling? Where is my emotions? Where's my physical body at? What do I need? And a lot of times I'll just ask myself, what do I need today? And your body will tell you that, but you have to practice tuning in and listening to that. Another really good time is before I go to bed, before I drop off to sleep, because what you think and what you put in your mind when you go to sleep, your subconscious is going to start working on that. So that's also another good place to build a habit is before you go to bed. And we've talked about sleep time habits and how important it is to give yourself that downtime before you go to bed. And this could be something you could add to that part of your routine as well.
I have a very similar
Yeah.
practice. I am an early riser, so I use that time in the morning and intentionally when I am drinking my first cup of coffee. This morning, it was incredible. I had this incredible cup of espresso. It's probably the best espresso I've had in my entire life. That's not what I was thinking. I was so grateful for that espresso, and I had it in this mug that I love holding. So I was just in that moment of really being mindful of everything that was happening in that moment. And when I took my first sip of the coffee and it went down so smooth and I was just in that moment. So that's when I know that I can capture my that moment and hold it present for a while and then start to think about my intentions for the day. And a cup of coffee is only hot but for so long. So that's as long as it has my attention. So that's in the morning. And then in the evening, rattle through the day. How did it flow? What did I intend to do? Did I accomplish it? Kind of people. But I also start thinking about what I am looking forward to. And then when I wake up in the morning, some of that stuff is already worked out. And I love that part of it. So I'm a
Yes.
morning and evening person as it comes to the mindfulness. And I don't know if you want to call it meditation, but it is definitely a practice of being, I would say, present with myself.
Yeah. I love your coffee story. That's so great. Very, very descriptive. You transported me. Yeah, I think that when you're first waking up, when you're winding down to go to sleep, that's actually when your subconscious and your conscious are most aligned. So, yeah, those are great times to practice any kind of intention setting and mindfulness.
Jen, I have so enjoyed our conversation today. This has really just given such a shift in how we can begin to think about our spiritual life, our mindfulness, and how it connects daily with our menopause journey. And I just so appreciate that you're here and that you're sharing all these experiences and what chakras are and how we can start incorporating this into our life. Is there anything that you would like some final thoughts that you'd like to share with the ladies before we wrap up?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. It's been wonderful talking with you ladies. And the main thing that I want people to take away from this is that everyone's menopause journey is different, but it never ever has to be a struggle. There is support for everyone, no matter what path you want to take. So if you do not want to take a path where you are on medications, there's support for you. You don't have to power through it. If you are on a path where you take medications and they're not working as well as you'd hoped, and you want some additional support on that emotional side, these kinds of things are good complements to the pharmaceutical approach as well. There's no one size fits all. There's not I'm an HRT person, I'm not an HRT person. Everything, you can customize your solutions to fit your lifestyle, to fit your values, to fit what's important to you, and to fit what most importantly, to fit what actually works for you. So don't give up on finding a solution. Talk to different people, be open to different perspectives, try out new things. And if you're in the menopause support group, if you're not in the menopause support group, get in it. If you are in it, look for my chakra balancing experiences. I'm doing them free right now in there. So come check it out and see how it works for you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Jen,
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely put all that information in the show notes for folks
Okay.
to click and grab that information about your different experiences and the programs that you currently have. I've enjoyed this conversation from a personal perspective and also from a broad-based perspective, and sharing that there are many options and solutions. And one of the most important things is not to feel alone and not to get stuck, because activation is the only thing that's going to bring you closer to solutions. So I definitely appreciate this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you both, Jen and Janette. This has just been very enlightening for me, and I hope that there's something in it for our listeners. Take away one or all, or find out what is going to work for you. So once again, thank you for joining us on the Menowave Lounge, hot flashes and cool conversations.
Thank you much.